Alright, this is Joe and Cole with growingyourgreens.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you. I'm here on a field trip in Houston, Texas, actually, in probably like one of the ghettos of the city, like not maybe the nicest neighborhood, maybe kind of near downtown, maybe kind of near I-10 and 59, and they closed down I-10, so it was like an extra half hour to get here today. But I'm here and I want to show you guys actually what they're doing here. We're actually at an organic farm, and it might not look like a farm to you because behind me what you're seeing is like piles of wood chips, and this is about a 2-acre property that was formerly a parking lot. So this is all over, you know, concrete slab or asphalt, and they basically built it up using, you know, the majority of free local resources that I know many of you guys may have in your city that I do want you to pay attention to. And what that is simply behind me, piles and piles of wood chips, right? I'm a big believer in the power of wood chips and using organic matter to create soil so that you can grow in, because the problem in this day and age is that we are losing topsoil, we are losing soil fertility. And the answer to this is not putting on some chemical fertilizer from the big box store, some Miracle Craft, some whatever stuff you're buying, but it's creating your own fertility on site like they're doing here with an available free local resource that's coming from maybe like the city or tree trimmers or like people that are trimming, you know, the trees and the power lines. They chip it up, and instead of going to the landfill, which I believe is a waste of resources, you know, the wood chips are coming here. They're using it to basically as the foundation of their garden, to, you know, to grow in, to line the, you know, the earth below it, the concrete slab you couldn't grow on. But when you build soil up, I mean, you could think of concrete slab as like hard pan or rock, right? And I know some of you guys might live over hard pan or over rock where you just don't have any soil, you can't grow in. But if you start piling up organic matter on top, right, you can have some of the most nutritious soil. So anyways, without further ado, let's go over to the farm and share with you guys what they're growing, and more importantly, how they're growing it. So where I'm at today is the Last Organic Outpost Community Farm, and this is where the community is coming together through basically the leadership of Joe, who's actually been on this property for the last 7 years, farming it, and has been involved with growing foods for the last 15 years on various projects throughout the city. Now, Joe's a really cool guy, right? Like, we walked around, he doesn't know a lot about the science. I don't know about a lot of the science about gardening, but I know a lot because I've read a lot and experienced a lot. But he's a cool guy because he's learned by doing. And, you know, I know most of you guys watching me don't have any kind of degrees in biology or plants and all this kind of stuff. And to be a good gardener, actually, I would recommend you guys don't get that stuff, right? I mean, yeah, it can be helpful, but I just learned by doing, and that's what Joe's done over all these years. And, you know, I was talking to him about like the fungus and the bacterial dominated compost and how he's actually making both of them here, and he didn't really know about all this stuff, and he was really excited. So, you know, I really want to share that for you guys in this episode. So I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and go into the farm and share with you guys how Joe and the community here has been growing food on this farm here for the last 7 years, and successfully, primarily using a lot of the wood chips. All right, so what we're looking at now is just part of farm, and this is pretty much how they've set it up. I mean, this was an empty parking lot when they got the property. They started up by bringing in the wood chips and making a nice, you know, deep base of the wood chips, and then bringing on some of the more finished compost, adding it on top, and then literally planting in it. I mean, that's what was done here. And as you guys can see, just some of the greenery things growing, it's doing really well. Now, that's the overall basics, but, you know, it's a little more complex than just bringing in the wood chips and making some soil. So I want to go ahead and show you guys specifically like how it's done, because this is a really good example, because actually they're just starting to set up some brand new beds now that's just getting planted out. So I have the opportunity to show you guys, you know, the specifics. I mean, seriously, this stuff started out as wood chips, and the wood chips over time break down into a rich black fungal dominated soil, you know, when done without heat. So, you know, I talked about that a little bit earlier. There's two kinds of compost. that is being primarily, actually 3 kinds, that's primarily being used here. Number 1, the fungal dominated compost, which is sourced primarily out of 100% wood chips. Number 2, the thermal based compost, which I'll also show you guys in a little bit, made under standard heat. And that's the compost that most people think of when they think compost. They don't think about the fungal dominated compost, which in my opinion is super critical. The other kind of compost they're using actually and creating here is actually they have many different bins with red wiggler worms. So they're making worm castings or vermicompost, which is a really another important source of compost, for your soil. So anyways, let's go ahead and show you guys the demonstration on how they put one of these beds together. So here's an example of how they're putting the beds together. Look, I mean, right here, I'm just literally sitting on all these wood chips here. And I kind of think this looks really cool. They got all the wood chips here, and it's basically about 18 inches high off the ground. Now, if this is your front yard, I don't know that I'd want to do this in your front yard, because for most people walking by this, it would look kind of weird, and most people aren't going to like how it looks. I personally like how this looks. I don't know that I'd still put it in my front yard, because I wouldn't want to draw, attention to my place. I'd maybe have a nice garden in the front, and in the backyard, yeah, I'd do this. Wow, and it's actually quite warm just on here. But yeah, they got the wood chips like piled up like a little hill, and then on top of the wood chips, they've put some finished compost that actually they're just starting to seed out some kind of like beets and whatnot in there that are already popping up. And this is probably a good maybe 8 to 10 inches tall. So, and in the top compost, they also add the worm castings as well. So, I mean, these are the 2 main resources, and these are 2 very important resources that I want you guys to use in your garden. Once again, if you're a gardener, if you're a farmer, your job is not growing vegetables, right? Your job is really about growing soil, and that's literally what they're doing here. So, I want to go ahead and show you. I mean, the wood chips are self-explanatory. They get dumped there. They just basically move them over, line them up. But I do want to show you guys how they make that soil real quick. And this is a really quick and easy, hands-off approach for you guys that are lazy to make some compost with minimal effort. So what we're looking at behind me is their compost pile here, and this compost pile is probably about 20 feet long, maybe about, I don't know, almost 10 feet, 8 to 10 feet tall in a nice pile. And they basically just mixed up the wood chips with food scraps from a local grocery store. That's basically when they got old produce that's going bad, or all the clippings, they send it here, and then they basically mix those 2 together, and then they aerate the pile. This is very important for compost to happen. I know many of you guys might have compost piles in your backyard. You're like, yeah, John, I bought that compost pile and just dump all my food waste in there. Well, number 1, besides the food waste, which is the nitrogen source, you need a carbon source, which is like the wood chips or shredded up paper or sawdust or leaves, something like that. And you need a good ratio, right? You need to mix those 2 together, which is one aspect. You also need the right moisture level. So they were in here checking the moisture level, making sure it's the right moisture level. And then you also need another thing very important for compost that most people miss. It's the air, it's the aeration. This is why I like a tumbling composter. When you tumble it, it aerates it. Some people like to fork and take the pitchfork and fork over their compost. I don't like forking compost. So I just tumble it. But even easier than that is actually what they're doing here is they're aerating it, right? Aeration, I've seen this at other commercial establishments, and most people at the home may not be aerating their compost, but they do it here because they don't want to sit here and turn the compost. It takes a lot of time. So what they got is they got all these PVC tubes. You can see them on the ground there. They got a big distribution system where a pipe comes in, it distributes off into 4 different pipes and runs all the way through the bottom of this big, huge pile. Once again, about 20 feet long. And they got all these holes perforated in there, and they turn on a blower every 20 minutes to blow air through there, which then puts the oxygen in there, and that helps aerate the pile and create the correct microbe balance, so that the microbes start breaking down and work on breaking down all the organic matter and turning it into the most nutritious soil. If you look closely, I don't know if you guys can see that, but the pile way in the back there, and this pile even to some extent, there's like steam coming off, man. This is another excellent way, like if you want to have a garden inside, if you're like gardening where it's cold, You could like have an aerated pile with a, you know, good organic matter, break it down inside like a hoop house, right? And it'll keep it that much warmer so that your plants can grow without you having to heat them in the winter. And I've been to several places that do that successfully. In any case, besides this kind of soil, which once again was on the top layer to actually grow in, because they're not growing in directly into the wood chips, right? Don't recommend that. Recommend growing in compost that's on top of the wood chips. They're adding something else very important, and that's the vermicompost. So let's go ahead and check out their setup here where they make the vermicompost. So besides making the standard soil, you know, another very important aspect to gardening, in my opinion, is making the vermicompost, or basically the worm castings or worm manure. I mean, this is often overlooked in gardening, how important the worm castings are. I mean, one of the things I like to do in my gardening style is model nature. And in a natural system, right, there would naturally be worms in the ground to basically help break down some of that organic matter and make it into nutrients for your plants. Now, whether you want to distribute worms in the different raised beds in your growing areas so they could do that there, I think that's actually excellent. Another way to do it is to basically have a worm bin like this made out of some wood, very simple, and they basically put the food scraps in here and they turn it into the rich, dark worm castings. Once the worms eat the organic matter, right, they turn it into castings. And the benefit of the castings is because it's basically pre-digested organic matter, but the main addition that the worms are adding that, you know, you really can't get from anywhere else is special microbes, the bacteria, the fungi. You could get chitinase digesters and cellulase digesters that are in there that are going to help your garden be even more productive than without them. Now, if you really want to supercharge your worm castings, right, most people will feed worms, you know, cow manure, chicken manure, and different things, which, you know, I don't think worms should be eating that as the majority of their diet. I believe the worms should be eating what they would eat naturally in nature, which is mostly decayed plant matter. So feeding them like even a finished compost or plant scraps, garden clippings, you know, broken down. Even things that are really important to feed your worms that I've learned from some worm experts are things like cardboard or shredded cardboard or cardboard slurry that you make up in the blender with some cardboard and some water. And another thing that's very important is chitin-rich source of nutrients for the worms, such as, you know, you could feed them your nail clippings, hair clippings. You know, if you get shrimp shells or crab shells from a seafood restaurant, that'd be excellent to feed to your worms to make a very high quality worm casting. Now, if you don't want to keep your own worms like they're doing here, that's all right. You could buy your worm castings like I like to, because I don't want to take the time to make all my worm castings. I buy this stuff called Worm Gold Plus worm castings. But in addition, of course, I have plenty of worms in my raised beds, despite not me having, you know, a worm home like this. Now, the other thing they just started doing here, which is really cool, is they're going to be starting to use BSF. That stands for black soldier flies. And black soldier flies are basically another little creature that digest organic matter to make basically concentrated nutrients for your garden. So they just built one of those little black soldier fly houses today, and they're going to get that up and running real soon to add nutrition to their garden. What I want to do next actually is take you guys around and show you guys some of the crops that's growing here, maybe some of my favorite things just before it gets too dark, and maybe share with you guys actually a cool phenomenon that's happening, you know, while growing in their wood chips. All right, now I'm walking through the moringa forest here, here in Houston. And this is basically all these trees they planted. Moringa, for those of you guys that don't know, is basically a tree. Now, this is a tropical tree. If you live where it frosts, and if they get a rare frost here, this tree will not make it. And these guys, you could just literally pick the leaves like I just picked there and eat them. Now, this is definitely a flavor you're gonna have to get used to. Like, I prefer kale over moringa. Like, kale to me tastes better. But there are certain varieties of moringa that taste a little bit better than others. But that being said, moringa is probably one of the most nutritious leafy greens that you could eat in life. If you go to health food stores, for example, they take the moringa leaves, they dry it, they powder up. They'll sell it to you for like $50, like a pound of dried moringa leaves. but better than dried, better than buying things in packages, bottles, and jars, is growing your own. If you live here in Houston, you definitely want to have a moringa tree. If you do get that frost or a frost warning, you will want to protect your trees so that they don't basically succumb to the frost. And the amazing thing is, this section here was planted in July, right? That was like about 5 months ago. And at 5 months, these guys are already like taller than me. They're probably like pushing 10 feet tall. They have a tree over there that's been planted since last January, so that's about 11 months old. And man, that thing's like 20 feet tall now. It's amazing. The cool thing about the moringa is that, you know, once they get really tall, you can basically just chop it off, and you could take the part you chopped off, stick it back in the ground. It'll actually re-root into a new plant, as will the part you cut will actually reshoot and grow anew. You know, I've heard when they harvest moringa, you know, commercially, they'll just let them grow so tall, they'll whack them back, use all the leaves, and they'll just basically keep letting them grow up and keep whacking them back, you know, to continually have a continual harvest. In addition, these also make what Indians call drumsticks, which are also edible, and they also, you know, the seeds can be used to purify water, from what I hear. So I mean, this is one of the most beneficial and nutritious crops that you might want to grow. Now, of course, besides the moringa, they grow a full spectrum of other crops, including lettuces, kale, collards, turnips, chards, I mean, herbs. I don't have a lot of time to go over all the different areas with you. I think maybe I'll share a few more different cool crops and unique things they're doing. And, you know, and then I want to share with you actually some cool stuff about some stuff that's happened to their soil here to maybe encourage you guys and motivate you guys about, you know, how you could literally take a parking lot, which what this was, and grow all kinds of food, you know, for the community as well as yourself. All right, so I got this sifting table here, and this is where they sift the soil. And you know, the guy Joe was giving me a tour here, and he's saying, John, you know, I was like sifting soil for like 3 days to put in these new raised beds that we're building. And he's like, the weirdest thing happened after 3 days of just sifting soil and smelling dirt, smelling the soil. Wow, that smells like some good stuff. You know, he's like, I felt real good, like almost euphoric. And yes, you know, you don't need any kind of drugs to feel euphoric. All you really need to do is be out in nature, and more importantly, smell the compost. There are actually studies, believe it or not, that say there's components in the compost, right, that after we smell it, we feel good. And maybe that's why I like going out to my compost tumblers and digging my hands in there and sniffing the stuff, because you just feel good. I mean, I think in this day and age, we all need to get back to nature and, you know, have natural smells in our world. I mean, so many times people go in and use all these chemical air fresheners, which I think are really not too healthy, when all we need really is some nature. And being downwind of all the wood chip piles, it's just real nice and pleasant to smell them. You know, as the smells waft over, as the compost wafts over, I just feel a lot better in nature, and I think you might too. So this has to be one of my favorite areas of the whole garden. They have a whole section of just herbs. They have like an herb spiral and a place with mint growing and all different kinds of herbs growing. But my favorite herb that they're growing here is right in here. All right, which one of you guys know what it is? All right, if you guys look closely, go ahead and pick a sprig here. Look at that. Yes, this is cilantro. Cilantro is really delicious. I love using sometimes just salads of only cilantro, maybe some with some mashed up avocado, some sprouted buckwheat groats, and some crushed garlic in there. One of my favorite recipes ever. And this whole big bed of cilantro, right? It was planted literally 2 months ago, right? And I mean, I know many of you guys out there may not have gardened before, and some of you guys have. But it's just amazing to me how you could literally just start out with some seeds and have, you know, yeah, while you could eat cilantro seeds, which are known as coriander, in literally 2 months of just some proper care, having some good soil, you could have more cilantro than you could eat in about a month, actually. And so I would encourage you guys, like they're doing here, is have different sections. So this section, they got cilantro, that raised bed, they got broccoli, that raised bed, they got beets, that raised bed, they got carrots. You know, and you could do this in your backyard, have different sections with different food crops so that you could start eliminating having to buy certain produce items from the store. You know, like I never have to buy any kind of collard greens or kale because they're just constantly growing year round in my garden. And you know, if I had this much cilantro, wouldn't have to buy cilantro either. Now, for me, cilantro is one of those crops you do not want to grow in the middle of the summer. You know, they grew it starting about 2 months ago in October, and that's definitely a good time when it starts to cool down, because cilantro, if you're growing it in the super hot heat, it bolts really fast and you're not going to have it. Some hot weather cilantro substitutes that you can use that I would definitely be growing here. One is called Popolo, which I love. I started growing this year. Does amazing, and I like the flavor actually even better than cilantro. And number 2 is another one you can grow for hot weather cilantro substitute that actually tastes really like cilantro, is actually called culantro. Now I want to encourage you guys all to eat a good quantity of cilantro in your diet. You know, from the research I have seen, it's actually good for cleansing and detoxification, especially with some of the heavy metals, which is what I've read before. So another thing you guys should definitely grow if you live here in Houston or places where you don't get a frost or very rarely get a frost are these guys right here. Look at this. This thing is loaded up with probably like over a dozen papayas on this tree. Now, papayas, they're not really trees because they don't have like the rings of like a real tree would. But for all practical purposes, we'll call it an honorary tree. It's really kind of an herbaceous plant. But papaya is definitely one of my favorite fruits to be eaten. Plus they grow and make fruits relatively fast as compared to other trees. Plus they're so delicious, and it's quite unfortunate that most papayas that are being imported are picked far too early and never fully flavor and ripen up properly. So to have the best papayas, you gotta grow them yourself. In addition, I want to encourage you guys to buy organic papaya seeds or GMO tested papaya seeds, because papayas are one of the crops that are being genetically modified in this day and age. So I want to ensure that you guys are not growing any papayas that may have some genetic contamination. So the last shot of this video that I want to share with you guys today is just this raised bed area that was recently put in. Once again, it's sitting on top of the wood chips here. And if we, you know, dig where these wood chips were, because they were thick, right? If we just dig down like a foot, we hit dark, rich, black soil. Now, you know, once again, Joe's aware that he's not growing vegetables, right? He's growing soil, and he told me, you know, that what he's doing, he's not putting money in his bank. He's basically creating soil, because the soil that you make is like money in your bank, right? If you have healthy, good soil, you will have good fertility and be able to produce healthy, abundant crops, you know, that are going to be more pest and disease resistant, yields higher, and also taste better. And so that's where he's putting investing his time to, you know, make good soil, and I want you guys to do that as well. Now, when you garden, you're always going to see and learn new things, and this is something that I've had to learn over the years, because, you know, we're taught in our society, like, we want things neat, clean, orderly. When things aren't looking good, then just pull it out and discard it, right? And I kind of tried to remind them, like, you know, in nature, there's always checks and balances. I mean, nature is the ultimate check and balance, right? When in a natural system, right, if there's too much rats in a place, right, then the cats will come and eat all the rats, right, to take care of that problem. And likewise, in nature's system, right, there's always checks and balances. If one thing is too high in the soil, right, bacteria, creatures, microbes, fungi will come to eat that stuff to basically create homeostasis or balance. And that's what's happening here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but here we got some like baby beet greens coming up. And if you look right here, it's like, I'll do a close-up for you guys. And it looks like we got the blob attacking the beets. And the little baby beet greens. You might think, John, man, what's that, man? It's got some kind of disease or something. Let's pull that out, man. Let's not eat it. Okay, so number one, I don't necessarily recommend eating the beets that are growing in the blob stuff. But I wouldn't know if I would necessarily remove the blob, because basically what the blob is some kind of fungus that's basically living there because it wants to, right? Because it's been raining a lot actually recently, which the rain and the wood chips is giving it a good home. You know, the fungus is basically what breaks down the wood chips or the cellulose in the wood chips, and you know, that creates a good healthy soil. So this is just nature at work. And if you get mushrooms or, this kind of stuff on your wood chip pile, that's to be encouraged actually. What you might want to do is take this and spread it to other wood chip piles to inoculate that with these spores and help that further break down. And that's what I recommended actually here. They take some of this stuff and maybe they have a section of the garden where they just actually, put the wood chips down, put a bunch of fungi on there, and if you want to buy the right mushroom to compost down your wood chips, it's called King Stropharia, I believe, and that stuff will basically break down the wood chips, and that's the right kind of mushroom that may appear naturally, but you can definitely seed it in there yourself to break that stuff down. So yeah, they got this kind of mushroom, they got some other kind of weird stuff here. I mean, look at that. This mushroom is literally on this piece of wood. I mean, we want to embrace nature, and if it's in a place like this where it's not the most, good for you because it's next to your beets, that's all right. Scoop it out and put it somewhere else, or just, let it grow. I mean, this is what we want to do. We want to get back to natural farming, right? This is part of a nature, spraying chemicals and pesticides. That's not a part of nature, and we don't want to be doing those things. So I'm glad that he's basically going through the whole learning process of learning how to grow in this environment, and he's able to share that with the community. So if you do live here in the Houston area, they give workshops. You could come down here, volunteer. You could learn about gardening. You could work for a day. You could get on-the-job experience, because for me, there's no substitute for on-the-job training or having experience, getting your hands dirty in the dirt. You can read as much as you want about gardening in books, watch my videos online, but until you start getting your hands dirty, until you start sniffing up this delicious smelling compost, you're just not going to get the full benefits of knowing or learning how to do it. So yeah, you can come out and volunteer. They also need financial support to keep this going. They have been doing this on literally a shoestring budget. They get a lot of things donated, like the wood chips and all this kind of stuff, the food waste, but there's always some need for things like wheelbarrows and other things on the farm. So if you are in a position to help donate, I'll go ahead and put a link down below to the Facebook page so that you can contact Joe and offer support in terms of volunteer help on site or a donation. In addition, if you do live in the Houston area and are looking for a good local source of clean food, I can definitely recommend that you come to the Last Outpost Community Farm here. Drop by any day of the week during normal hours, and they'll be able to sell you some fresh, naturally grown food here. And that's really cool because they always got some growing. And make sure you get some of that moringa if you've never tried it. One of the most nutritious leafy greens in the whole wide world. I mean, probably my last few tips I'd like to give to the farm here, because they're doing a lot of good stuff right. And like me, in my gardening style, my gardening practice, I've visited a lot of different farms, seeing a lot of different things. I have my own gardens and grow my own food, and I've seen how to do it, and they got a big part of the puzzle solved here, and I'm glad they're doing that. They got the wood chips, they got the fungal dominated compost, they got the thermal dominated compost, they got the worm castings, the vermiculture going on, very important. But the one thing that is missing to some extent, in my opinion, at this farm are the trace minerals. Trace minerals are critical to gardening, even more important than what is commonly believed. And there's not a lot of research on trace minerals in the garden, but I have experienced a difference using the trace minerals in my garden. So my biggest recommendation for here would be get some rock dust, or also known as gravel dust. You could visit a local rock and stone quarry, hopefully ones that get rocks out of like a riverbed, like basalt style rocks or volcanic rocks, and you want to get the finest particle size, as much as they're broken down into like almost a dust powder, like flour consistency. And the best thing to do would be take some of that cheap, inexpensive rock that sometimes can be gotten for $20-$30 a load. Sometimes places are just trying to get rid of it, and mix that in to the wood chips as they're breaking down, and also mix that into the thermally aerated compost piles that I showed you, and that'll just bring the level up from like here on up to here, and really improve production, improve crops resistance to the weather, to the heat, and to other external stressors. Another very important, inexpensive thing that I would do if this was my farm is, they are collecting rainwater off the roof, which I didn't get the chance to show you guys that. They also got an aquaponic system going in. They also got chickens. I mean, there's so many more things I could have showed you in this video with so little time because the sun's going down. But the other component that really is critical is when they're overhead watering, it's very important to do two things. Number one, I would do a compost tea on a weekly basis, basically an aerated brewed compost tea from the worm castings. Aerate the worm castings with like a bubbler, and then spray that on, foliar feed and soil, drench that in. This will multiply the beneficial effect of the worm castings. And the other foliar spray that I would highly recommend is some kind of trace mineral supplementation. So the easiest way to do this would be get a product such as called the Ocean Solution, Ocean Grown, or a product called the C90, which you'll dilute in the proper ratio according to the label, and this will add 90 trace minerals to the plants, to the leaves, because the leaves can absorb nutrients, as well as to the soil, to really step the level up here. Now, if you don't want to get the agricultural C90 salt, basically, you want to do it the cheap and dirty, inexpensive way, you go to a local health food store and you want to get like a real unprocessed gray sea salt, right? You want to get the gray one. Don't get the white crystalline one. You want to take that gray sea salt that's nice and dirty color. You might have to go to a couple health food stores to find a good quality salt and just buy a pound of that stuff. Then you're literally going to take 1 teaspoon of that good quality high-end sea salt that has trace minerals in it. You're going to dilute 1 teaspoon to 1 gallon of water and then foliar feed that on your plants, whether that's with a spray bottle, whether that's with a pump sprayer. And I'd feed that in probably like once every 2 weeks, right? And just foliar spray everything. And in my opinion, if they do those 2 ways to bring the trace minerals back in through the rock dust and through the sea minerals sprayed on, they're only going to ramp up their production. The plants are going to be healthier, and more importantly, they're going to be putting more money in the bank. And that's not into the Bank of America or the Chase Manhattan Bank. That's into the soil bank, and that's what they are truly growing here, the soil, and there's easy ways and inexpensive ways to build your soil up so that it'll keep feeding you, your family, and the community for many years to come. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick episode today at the Last Outpost Organic Community Farm. Once again, my name is John Kohler with growingyourgreens.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, remember, keep on growing. All right, this is John Kohler with growingyourgreens.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you. My last day here in Maui. I'm sad to be actually flying out of here tonight, but I'm really happy actually because I'll be seeing my girlfriend tomorrow. But anyways, aside from that, why I'm here today in a standard residential neighborhood